Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Load of Balls. And I'm delighted to be joined by Marty Walker, Pete McGrath Jr. and Danny Hughes. Lads, thanks a million for jumping on this week. It must have been leaked, boys, that you three were coming on because the subscriptions have gone through the roof. Lads, I'm not going to lie to you. There's people following the show left, right, and centre. I never knew as many people that were so interested in Down GA, not even in Down, but throughout Ulster. So it's fantastic, lads. You know what I mean? So great week for the show, and
it's good the press release had that you were bringing me and Marty on.
the last time, Pete, Pete, the last time you were on, your face getting pictured everywhere. You're the poster boy of the podcast now. So it's only fitting that you come on now to this week. I suppose we'll start off with Division 1 men. We're a bit hard on Division 1, maybe that the teams are a wee bit shadow boxing that there as well. But what is the form with Division 1 then, Pete? And like, who is impressing and who's not, apart from yourselves, obviously?
I think what you have in Division 1 is every team started the league intently with the aspiration of going for it, and as the thing has gone on and probably the top has filtered down to 3 or 4 teams, the others that have dropped off that pack with no relegation are now probably looking ahead and planning towards championship, and you'll see probably a little bit of squad rotation in there, keeping people fresh for the championship, maybe not showing their full hand in some games. But I do think there has generally been a good level of competition in Division 1. I mean, just Tuesday night, we've had Warren Point beaten for the first time by Ballyholland, who looked very impressive in that game. You've got a Clonduff side who have only lost once. You have Kilcoo, who have been beaten twice. Mayo Bridge beaten once as well. So you've got a lot of teams who haven't lost that many games. You have teams who are looking consistently strong. Your Burns, your Mayo Bridges, your Clonduffs. Ballyholland on their day have definitely shown they're capable of challenging with anyone as well. And of course, we all know that Kilcoo are still the team to beat. So there has been a level of competition in the games, and I'm sure we'll go through them in a little bit more of an individual manner shortly as well. But as a general rule, the league has been competitive. What I would imagine seeing this last couple of weeks, though, is those teams who are out of contention in that top pack, focus will switch solely to the weekend beginning Thursday, the 16th of September.
Mm-hmm. Danny, what's your take on Division 1 as well? Obviously there's no relegation, so there is that safety net.
Of course, and that's going to dictate the bite in any game when there's no competition. I think when they decided to take away the fact that there was relegation, which I never really understood, to be honest. I think, whether you do it on a short league or a long league, I'm not quite sure what the thinking was behind that. It was unfair with COVID years and stuff like that. But I don't see any reason why they couldn't have put relegation in. It certainly would have brought a lot of bite to the Division 1 football. And let's be honest, in the championship, there's only a few teams that will really, at the end of the day, probably be in the semis and final. Now that might change. Of course, there's always a team that'll come through and surprise us. But by and large, you'll see the same teams qualifying at the latter end of the championship. So I think a competitive league would have been very, very welcome, given the difficult couple of years that we've went through. And dare I say it, teams will start to focus on championship and whatever else. But, for me, it's a bit like the inter-county championship football. Some of the best games you'll see will still remain to be league football. There seems to be just a lack of an edge to most of the league games, I would say, at this point.
Yeah,
just on the Division 1, I think the reason they didn't want anybody down, wanted to beef up the numbers in Division 1 from 10 up to 12. But I suppose they could have brought 3 up and 1 down and would have kept that competitive edge.
Of course, and that would have been, I don't think anybody would have been objecting to that. But the fact that when you pull relegation, you really pull the basis of the competition. Like yes, it's Division 1, Division 2, 3 and 4, but the Corn and Doon, I suppose that was the reason. That was the reason the Corn and Doon was started, was to give decent competitive games. But really, the league's a glorified extension of that, really. Albeit, yes, we're not playing against maybe a Division 1 or Division 2 team, but you've seen Mayo Bridge had a poor, for example, Mayo Bridge had a poor Corn and Doon, and maybe decided early on that they weren't going to play their full hand in that. And then when it comes to the league, they're actually competing really well in the league and getting good results there. So it's difficult. It's really difficult to say. I suspect that Division 1 and the Championship will come down to the four big teams. Three big teams: Clonduff, Kilcoo, Bourne, and possibly then you'll have 1 point, Ballyholland, knocking on Mayo Bridge. But can you really see many competing outside of those? I don't really think so. I could be wrong, but maybe Peter
might want to go one better than last year, so they might want to figure. Don't know why Cardiff showed the full hand either yet this year, but they're still.
Yeah, well, I suppose they're doing well in the league. I think it's going to come down to them on 1 point, from initially, and yeah, Cardiff will be thereabouts, but very difficult. They had a really good route through last year, but really, if they do it again, certainly, they have to be respected. But I think maybe it might be a big ask to go there again.
Hey, what players have impressed you over the shortened league then?
Well, I suppose again, obviously, playing teams. It seems like you have almost a game every few days. So it's actually quite difficult to get a chance sometimes to go to other games as well on top of that. So I have probably seen most players only once. But certainly Corey Quinn has put up a couple of big scores for Mayo Bridge. There's probably no dramatic surprise there. He's their target man. He's the focus of their attack. And if a team shuts down his scoring threat, they probably quell a fair percentage of Mayo Bridge's danger, particularly in terms of scoring goals. For Ballyholland, who have been mentioned, I think Jack Murda has really impressed this year. Obviously, Shamie Loughran still there, was top scorer, I think, in the championship last year with 30 points, or Stephanie scored 30 points in 4 championship matches. Very, very accurate from dead ball. Kieran Rush still dangerous in their forward line. Clonduff have a number of good forwards. Obviously, Barry O'Hagan, Sean for down against Donegal. Very, very dangerous player. Arthur McConville playing as a good target man for them. Darren O'Hagan coming out of the defence and manning their defence very, very strongly. Tom Close, who had a good season with the down under 20s, has brought that form into the down league. You look at Kilcoo, we know the plethora of players they have. Burn are very, very similar. Again, some good young players coming in to strengthen and bolster what was already a strong squad. And I think Danny was maybe being a wee bit unfair to some teams. They're saying it could come down to 2 or 3, because after he said it could come down to 3, went on to name 6 and left out last year's championship finalist Carried Up, Anders Trevor.
So the reason why I left
out. I do think the senior championship is quite open. And I do think that there are possibly 7, 8, 9 teams who will fancy that they could get a serious run in the championship. And because there are that number who are in contention, you're going to have a situation in maybe in round 2 or a quarter final where those guys are playing each other, maybe even in a qualifier match, depending on what way the draw goes, where you have some of those bigger teams playing each other, and as 1 or 2 of them drop out. Danny was maybe saying Carried Off got a nice route to the final last year. The same thing could open up for somebody this season, and you just never know what's going to happen in championship football. It's who can perform on a given day. It's who can be ready, set mentally, physically for that game, that date. And I mean, one of the things that has been noticeable in the league is that a lot of teams are standing back and standing off when the opposition are coming at them. It was in the Warren Point Ballyholland game. In the third quarter of that game, Warren Point were 2 up at half time, and in the third quarter, Ballyholland scored 5 unanswered points. The Warren Point defenders stood 2-3 yards off. Instead of pressing, instead of engaging, making physical contact, would have made it a lot more difficult for the Ballyholland players. But Ballyholland have talent in the forward line, and Shamie Loughran got 2 points, I think. Jack Murda got a point, Kieran Rush got a point, and then another score came in that period. Because players had 3-4 yards of space, they were able to swing the ball over the bar. So come championship football, I think we're going to see a totally different attitude in terms of how teams defend, because management teams will realise, players will realise that the more you stand off, the more likely you are to concede scores. And by engaging, by forcing players to make decisions quicker, by forcing players to make decisions more often, you increase the chances of that player making a mistake. And that's what teams are going to be targeting for the championship. And the team who does that most often and does that best will go a long way.
And with the greatest respect, the team that has done it for the last decade is Kilcoo. And
absolutely,
you know, and the bottom line is that they're very, you know, you could go in as a manager into Kilcoo and it's really player driven. This is a lot of this is all player driven within them, and I feel that it's a bit like people that you know, people talking about Dublin for this last decade, or somebody's going to get them, and there's a renewed hope every year. And absolutely there is, and you have to play the game in that way. There has to be hope, but I just feel that to look outside of Kilcoo and that domination at the minute is a big say. And I understand teams will certainly be buoyed by the fact that it's another championship campaign that comes around. But really, I don't think football works. You can turn on a light switch and they can suddenly start to do those things that you say. The league football is, when you look at Burns' results, for example, they've only been beaten 1 or 2 matches, or sorry, 3 matches by a single point. Now, I'm sure with the new manager being in there, Jim McCurry and stuff, it will be, he's tried a lot of players, and they'll be finding their feet as well. And, you know, Dura said 1 point as well are going quite well, and they will be thereabouts. So those, I suppose, teams that have been there that last, I don't want to sound disrespectful to other teams that will come along and see the championship, like Carried Off and stuff like that, but it just is hard at the minute to say that any other teams, bar those, I suppose, Clonduff's, heavyweights, Burns thing, will not be there at the latter end of the championship, because history has shown us that they are and have been. So I do think that league football, with the absence of the relegation, a lot of those players would have stood off. But if that had been a competitive game, there might have been that added factor in that there was more intensity in the tackle, more. There's a much more intensity when we go to win the game and go forward and stuff like that. So, you know, I think it's going to be a very, very difficult thing to measure when we're going into this new championship campaign.
Yeah, no, it's very noticeable as well. Like, you know, whenever players are kind of wee niggle as well in Division 1, they just don't play as well.
Exactly.
So, you know, and like, I think we were at the Warren Point and Ballyholland game there, obviously not together, but you know, you had
why not?
Pete had a big role tonight. Junior, look, whatever they say about you as umpire, you know, keep the head up. I thought you had a great game.
So did I.
Do you know, I have to admire your unwavering confidence, Pete. I have to say, about, you know,
Danny, when you do the thing right, and you know in your own heart and soul you've made the right decision, there's no reason to lack confidence.
But when you're standing signaling wide before the ball even comes near the post, you know
that's only when you shoot.
Well, I thought he's going to. Ballyholland boys weren't happy at him at half time. Anyway, it was touch and go when they got the second half. But Pete,
I think one person did say on the way off the field at half time, Jack Nicklaus hadn't as many clubs, but don't worry, I haven't lined that man up for some time in the future.
Do you know, when you're talking about the players that have stood out now, maybe the thing, but I've seen a couple of games now where obviously it's a player close to your own heart, Pete. Keane Mooney has been playing exceptionally well, and he is the difference between Downpatrick, probably, you know, Downpatrick are very, very good, very strong.
Danny, are you depressed? Have you set out to depress this man? Have you? Look, Pete, try right.
They give us a bit of a schooling last week, to be fair. Bad night and all the rest of it. But they are very, very slick. They were very, very good, and Mooney was exceptional, really exceptional, I have to say. And that's a couple of times I've seen him this year, and his pace, his power, his aerial ability really is. Obviously, Roostevor is a massive, massive blow. I don't think you can underestimate how big of a blow that is to a club, and then how much of an advantage it gives Downpatrick when it comes to the championship football. But he's a serious, serious player, and I have to say, someone who's playing exceptionally well,
Mm-hmm. Well, I was actually going to wait till we came on to Division 2 to get another go at you, Danny, there, because you also left Downpatrick out of your forecast. And in the last couple of years, Downpatrick have been a dangerous championship team. Add in, as you said, the Keelan Mooney factor, who has been doing very well for them. I think they could be a dark horse this year. I know they have Carryduff in round 1. And it wouldn't surprise me. I know Carryduff would be strong favourites for that game, but it wouldn't surprise me if Downpatrick were able to turn them over.
No, it certainly wouldn't surprise me either. Now, to be fair, but I have to say that I just Downpatrick with dark horses for what? What are the dark horses for? I suppose that's my question to you. Dark horses to what? Make a semi-final, final, win it?
Dark horses to get a significant run into the latter stages of the championship, possibly take a couple of big scalps along the way. And when you get to the latter stages of the championship, if you get to a semi-final, anything can happen at that stage.
Yeah, that's the difference between me and you. I only operate in winning, you know what I mean? I only operate in that.
What exactly did you win?
See, I did no, hold on there. I didn't
Haircut of the year, 2012.
I didn't say I was any good at winning. What I said was I only measure success in winning.
Fair enough.
But Pete, there has been a massive turnover in players for Roostevor as well. How difficult has it been this year? And have you bled in a number of players? That there is no relegation this year. Well, has that allowed you to bring on the youth in it then?
Pardon me. Yeah, there's been a lot of players who've played their first extended run of senior football this year, and as you say, there has been a huge turnover. Obviously, Keelan went to Downpatrick. You had Jordan, who went out to Ballymartin. You had Jarlath Farrell, who retired. Conor McGee, who retired. You had Nicky Murray, who went to work in England. Darren McElhinney, who's working down south and living down south. More recently, we have Matt Grimley, who's gone to work in Spain. So you have had a number of key players, and pretty much all of those players would have been in your top 13 last season. So yes, there's been a challenge there for obviously other people to come in to get some game time, to get experience. The Corn doing work well for us for doing that as well. It has meant that we have had a base now of maybe 14, 15 games where guys have got game time, where guys have got opportunity and have built up experience. And our hope would be that bank of experience that they've built up this year, a lot of them for the first time, is something that we can then maybe call on come the business end of the season. And that has to be our target, and that is our target.
Mm-hmm. No, I was only at one Division 1 game, and I said it was Tuesday night, Thursday night. So impressed me for one point was Aaron McGee at 11. I thought he was exceptional in the first half. Ryan Boyle at right half back, Cormac McCartan centre half back. But one point were a bit toothless up front. I felt that again they're getting bodies back, but at times they left a space of around 30 meters, 40 meters between Joe McGee up top and the rest. So whenever Ballyholland got into their shape, it was a bit, they weren't extending that back line, and it was as you said, long range shots that really in the first half it worked.
They're possibly saving themselves the big game on Friday night. But it's an interesting point you make, John, because actually when you look at Warren Point this season in the league, yes, they beat Kilcoo, but they scored 0-12. They drew with Clonduff, scored 1-9. They drew with Mayo Bridge, 1-11. They beat Burn OK, they got 2-11 that night. They beat Loughlin Island, 0-16. And then they're beaten tonight, 1-10. So they're not posting huge scores. They're not scoring an awful lot of goals. And one thing that you will generally find you need to win a championship is you need to be scoring goals consistently, pretty much every match. And Warren Point haven't been posting huge scores. Okay, they haven't been conceding an awful lot, but I think by the time they hit championship, they'll want to be upping their average score from maybe 13, 14 to sort of 16, 17 if they're to be in any way competitive at the business end of a championship campaign.
Yeah.
So what you do say about them lacking something up front, there's definitely something in that.
And Ballyholland, again, like the first time seeing Ballyholland, but their work rate, Tiernan Rush for me was exceptional. I think he turned over the ball 3 times in a row at one stage, and that sort of third quarter period, he got the game by the scruff of the neck. Paddy McIntyre in midfield, obviously Paul Murphy still battling in the midfield as well. But up front, they've Jack Murdoch, Seamus Loughlin, and just say Tiernan whenever he plays a wee bit closer. 3 dangerous forwards that, obviously Ballyholland are known for their defence. And they break and they get the ball to the shooters.
Well, I think Ballyholland are a club who are transitioning maybe from that, what we would generally perceive them as you say, they're that defensive side. Joe Murphy still contributing strongly in the half-back line as well, and is good at driving forward, coming as a late runner, potentially to get a shot or to lay it off to one of those younger players who are very, very capable scorers. Also, that Ryan Connolly tonight at wing half forward got through a mountain of work, and late in the game scored a decisive goal from a high ball in, managed to get the flick to the net. So while they have absolutely definitely got the talent, they also bring a work rate and an intensity to their games. I've actually seen Ballyholland 3 times now. I've seen them tonight. I saw them against Rostrevor, and I saw them against Mayo Bridge. In the Mayo Bridge game, they were a wee bit off themselves. Mayo Bridge brought the intensity, the physicality that night, and Ballyholland, whether it was just that they were, for some reason that night there was something wrong with them, maybe they were missing 1 or 2 keys in the chain, although they weren't drastically a different team. They sat off Mayo Bridge, which is something they haven't done in the other games I've seen them. They didn't play with that same energy, that same drive. They were playing more sort of long, hopeful ball in, as opposed to working it through the hands, creating the space, and then playing the softer ball in, getting a man off to support as a third player, which they've done well in the other 2 games I've seen them. So I suppose Ballyholland have had a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde thing in the last couple of years anyway as well. They've gone out some games, played really, really well, really impressed, and then for some reason on some days they're just a wee bit flat. But if they can consistently get themselves to the peak they were at tonight, to the peak they were at against Rostrevor, then they're a threat to any team that have been mentioned as championship contenders. They really are.
Danny, how impressive is Paul Murphy still playing football? Obviously, I retired, I think it was 30, 35, I think you tried to play on a couple of years. A couple of years
I
more.
retired twice.
Well, like I seen Ronnie
go that well, so I decided to come back.
I seen Ronnie was on the sideline as well. He wasn't cut out. So
he's struggling. He has pretty serious knee issue there with in the close season, and plus he had a shoulder operation actually finally. So it's just taking a wee bit of time to get back with the knee. Obviously he hopes to still contribute, and he's great belief. Ronnie's great belief, as does Paul. In the youth that's coming there with Ballyholland, and we actually played them in a challenge game just after the Cornadoon, and I was very, very impressed with Ballyholland. Again, as Pete said, the work rate was very good, and I suppose a guy that does a lot of work there and wouldn't be known for as a scorer, but geez, he does a mountain of work. Is Walshy. He plays wing half forward. He's very, very fit, very quick, and has a real go. He's a player I really rate because he's a real go. And when we talk about athleticism, when we're talking about players that want to go box to box, and players that can add, and players that are quite strong and tight, like there's nothing to it as you whip it, but what he is, he's tight. And players that could certainly, you could do within a wider squad at a higher level. So I think the potential is there. I suppose in Down I think there's 30 good players in Down. I really do believe that, and I think that at inter-county level, if you were to transgress that into inter-county level, I think there's the bones, and I've always believed that there's a bones of a good competitive Down squad there if we can get everybody there. Now, there's certain people that will, no matter if they're invited or not, they will never commit to inter-county football. But I suppose, you know, what we all want to see is a good competitive club scene, and it's never ever good if one team dominates that. Like Cross dominated Armagh football, Armagh weren't going well, and when they started, you know, obviously we've seen Armagh progress, and that has coincided with Cross loss of domination and teams like Mahari and stuff coming through. So the more competitive we can make it, the more teams that will follow that Kilcoo model in terms of hunger and trying to get up to that level, the bar that they've set, and it's a very high bar. The more teams that can almost copycat or piggyback in to try and get to that level, the better for Down and the better for the club scene, you know. So, but Ballyholland certainly have a big contribution to make it inter-county level, and Morph has made that contribution over the years and is still making a huge contribution to his club and will remain there as long as he is fit to get into the team. And he's a different type of player than, say, Ronnie, who is explosive and all-consuming, but Paul is just in the middle there, and he just does exactly what he says. Does exactly what he says in the tin nailing. He just roots about there, and he does a great job, and he's tough, and he will get stuck in. And games like up in Ballyholland, where it's a tight field, they really suit him down to the ground, you know.
Yeah. No. It's
We mentioned guys that we maybe being unfair to Division 1, saying about shadow boxing and they're not showing the full hand. I suppose the litmus test for that will be the final game of the season when Kilcoo take on Clonduff. It could well be the league decider. Will both them teams go out and show their full hand just ahead of championship? To be honest, I don't think they will, but if it's a league decider, do Kilcoo put the importance in the league, winning another league? Do Clonduff put the importance in maybe getting a win over Kilcoo psychologically just ahead of championship time? It's going to be an interesting one. They meet each other in the last game, so
there's what Marty. The Kilcoo or Clonduff could win the challenge or 2 league titles in space of a month.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's.
But you know what I suppose was in the thing about it is there isn't a great deal of love lost between both them teams, so neither will be beat, and it's like anything. Yes, you know. What, there'll be 3 weeks between that and the start of the championship, so I think there's a long enough lag time for them to. You see, the danger there is if you give an inch to either team, they'll be buoyed by a win. So you know, from the psychological perspective, you want to keep your foot in their neck. If you have them there, you want to keep your foot in their neck, and it's very, very hard to go out there and purposely lose a game. Do you know what I mean? You know,
Kilcoo would never do that anyway.
I know, but you know what I mean. To even put out a weekend side, like, you know, if you're putting in maybe non-starters or secondary team, very, very difficult to go out there and do that. Because the fact is, as a winning culture and a winning mentality is bred into both teams, so you would think that that both teams will look to go and win the game. But they'll not probably take any chances with those guys. It's maybe carrying a few knocks, as you said. Marty.
Lads, we'll move on to Division 2 then. Dan, I suppose it's been an interesting couple of weeks. You know, whenever Downpatrick got beat against Glen, there was a real surprise for everyone, because I think everyone thought that Downpatrick were going to go unbeaten, really, in the league. It opened up Glen's season. Longstone beating Saul. And then yourselves getting beat by Downpatrick. You had a good win against Dara Cross, was it?
Yeah, Dara Cross last night, yeah.
Yeah. You know, you're still in the mix. So I think it's between, if you're the bookies would have Downpatrick favourites, obviously Longstone second favourites, yourselves and Glen then. Would it be? Do you think that would be fair?
I think that's how it's looking. I think that's fair. I think that, you know, I suppose I'm only talking from our perspective, up and unraked turned us over. We, you know, very simple mistake that was made at 59 minutes. You know, the draw was the game was in the balance. We had possession, and they go down and score a goal, and you have 4 or 5 minutes to claw back that, and we just couldn't get it back. So it was a result that was very, very disappointing on the night, and it may come against us. The Downpatrick one was a simple case where we just did not turn up. And obviously that was on Friday past, and then we had the game on Monday night. So it's always difficult to pull yourself up from that, because there was obviously we had a lot of expectations that we were going to be very competitive with Downpatrick, as we were in the corner doing, and it didn't turn out that way. And we were very disappointed as a group. I think the margin of error, or the margin of defeat, probably wasn't a true reflection. But then again, you really have to work hard, and we admittedly we weren't at those levels that you would expect, and obviously that I suppose myself and the management team would demand. We have a very, very brilliant trainer in there. He comes along with myself, Gavin trainer, Sparky trainer, and he's a top class coach. But again, when you put the boys on the you know yourselves, when you put the boys over onto the field, a lot of it comes down to them. And there is a school of thought there that I have, that sometimes you can overcoach teams and overcoach players, and that can lend itself to nearly too much instruction and too much coming from sideline to field, instead of boys taking initiative and learning and finding out how to do stuff themselves. So that's I suppose that's something that we've been trying to work on with the boys, to take the initiative, make decisions for themselves, and see how we go, because they have to learn. But listen, we bounced back with a win against Darcross, which was totally in the balance the whole way through. And it's just we got over the line, and I suppose as a big club, Castlemaine are obviously a big club in Down, and you have teams like Glen, like Darcross, like Saul, like Breda, that are all coming, and there's no giving now in any of these things. Big, small clubs means really nothing. You have to go out there. Everybody's preparing really well. Their levels of preparation, you see it now, John, you'll be aware of it now, and I'm sure the other guys are saying the band work that's been done before, the science behind it. So everybody's on that level. The bars are being. What was
your thing with Division 2 then, Danny? Whenever you went in, were you surprised at the level, or it's different whenever you're playing in it, but whenever you're coming in as manager, then obviously you shipped a lot of goals in your first couple of games. You seem to address that then. But what was your expectation?
We're down from 5 to 2 now.
What was your expectations whenever you went in as a league Division 2?
There was people slagging me, saying I had Kevin Keegan philosophy. If you score 5, we'll score 6. It's the purest. And you can't say that the Castlemaine supporters aren't getting value for money. Last night we were down by 6 points at the last water break, and we come back and we won by 2. We've done a lot of fitness work, obviously, but it's. I would call managing football. You go through, when you go into that football environment, it becomes football schizophrenia. That's the way I would describe it, because you turn from, a not so hateful bastard to a hateful bastard, and you become your emotional. It's a real, it's a play on your emotions, because you go from satisfaction. I wouldn't go from highs, but satisfaction that you've worked on something, then it's become off, and then you go from terrible, horrific lows where you're seeing something so basic, and it's maybe not done well, or it's done really poorly, or something that we've discussed prior to the game, and it's just not followed through. And that's, I found that managing of my emotions particularly difficult, and even leaving it when you come home and stuff like that. But listen, I guess that's why every one of us are in the same boat. It's very, very frustrating, and I don't know if I'll be able to keep it up for the next couple of years.
The
What
roller,
about the stand?
the
What
roller
about
coaster you're on, Danny, that roller coaster.
Definitely.
Are you managing it
Not a
as well as
place.
John Clark? I think John was on the ground, banging the ground and kicking water bottles there one night.
Who John is?
John Clark, the night we played.
And John, and let me tell you, John has always been much more calmer than I have ever been. John is a real quiet fella. Also, until he got a few drinks in him, he totally lacked emotion, any sort of emotion.
That's what football has done to him.
That's exactly Marty, and that's the perfect example of somebody that's affected now by that football schizophrenia. So, listen, my expectations were, I'm ambitious. I want to succeed in everything I do. I've always been like that as a player and as a manager, and that doesn't change anything. And as I was saying to Peter, I measure it in silverware.
What about the standard of Division 2, Danny?
Standard. I suppose it wasn't that long ago when we were in the. We went from first to second to third, and dare I say it, the standard in Division 1, at the lower half of Division 1, which is where we were sitting at the time, into the top half of Division 2, there wasn't a huge difference. I think it's very, very strange. It can be harder to get out of the third division than it can be to get out of the second, believe it or not. I think there's very much there's an element where you make mistakes here. Obviously, as the divisions go up, you make a mistake in the third, you might get away with it. You make the thing in the second, you might be punished, but you make a mistake in the first, you will be punished, and you can nearly take that as a given. So you can definitely see the incremental increases as the division teams there. What I would say is the one thing that I have seen, there are good players in the second division. But it's a bit different from years ago, maybe 20 years ago, where you one or two class players in each team and they were of inter-county standard. Obviously I talked about Mooney and stuff like that, but other than that, the best players, I would have to say, the best players in the county are probably in the county panel, if that makes sense, or obviously one club that maybe don't commit as much. But the best players are in the county squad, and I would say that. And there is an absence of really dominating midfielders. I would have to say that as well, that there's nothing. We have a guy, actually, Sean Dornan, and Sean has played into county football, and on his day is unmarkable. But Sean doesn't want to commit to the county, and that's fair enough. He's got other things going on, but a phenomenal talent, but obviously, it's a bit like just doesn't want. He's happy playing club football, and that's where his focus is. So, but aside from that, really. The I don't know what the other guys would say, but the other big tall men that a new down county manager is going to find, I'm not so sure.
Oh, Sean Dornan, you playing in the middle of the park now instead of full forward, are you?
Yeah, middle of the park, yeah.
Making him do a bit of work for a change instead of standing there.
And I tell you, he's been first class, and he's really consistent, and he's as I say. Obviously I've been around football a long time. As a talent, there's few that can touch him. He's a really phenomenal talent, and really strong in the air, serious power and pace. So he's been playing middle of the field, and he's been brilliant, going both ways, I have to say.
Fair play to you getting that out of him. I always thought Sean liked the edge of the square where he could pump the ball into him, and he didn't have a big lot of work to do going the other way.
No, he's actually, to be fair to him, he's been for first class, and he's been going looking for work now. So he has been putting in the tackles and stuff like that. But certainly, if I was a county manager, I'd be lifting him to go to training.
There's two boys that obviously Rory Mullen's injured for us, but exceptional footballer, midfielder. But Matty Hardy as well, from Dara Cross. Just coming back from COVID and that there as well. So, but Matty's I know them boys are like 27, 28 now, but it's a pity that someone didn't identify them at 22, 23 to get them in, and then you would have had
Should have been in. Absolutely, should have been in. And there was two lads from Loughin Island, and we played against them in a pre-season friendly. Two McClements lads, and they completely and I mean totally dominated the midfield sector. Now I know maybe one of them or two of them were in, but these guys need to be probably stuck with throughout not just one campaign or one McKenna Cup campaign. And I listen, there's no point. We don't see inter-county training, so it's all right for me to say this and to carry maybe an extra 10 or 12 boys. But I honestly believe in the merit of carrying a shadow squad. I know John Morrison and Mickey Moore used to do it because they weren't from Mayo when they were managing Mayo and they went to an All-Ireland final. They used to carry what it was called a shadow squad. So 12 or 13 boys that met up once or twice a week and they'd be pulled into games, in-house games and stuff like that. And it kept them involved in it. I honestly believe that we should go down that route of carrying boys like Matthew Hardy. Matthew Hardy, I seen him play up on Richt, and he was outstanding against for Derek Ross, and a really, really good strong runner, has fitness and can win the ball in the air. And again, guys like that on the McClements boys, I definitely think there's a merit in having them in that sector or not. But as I say, I haven't seen Loughin Island play in a long time. So
lads,
we played Loughin Island. We played Loughin Island early in the season, and actually Declan McClements had a quiet game that night in the middle of the park for about 40 minutes, and then had a good enough 20. He is big. He is strong. He has always been that way and mobile. Aaron was probably a bit lighter for a while, but has really bulked himself up in the last couple of years and has got himself now to a physique where he is potentially a county footballer. He's got himself playing at a level consistently enough where he could potentially challenge to be a county footballer. You've spoken about another couple of players there, and these are all guys who are getting, as you mentioned, 25, 26, 27. I think the big thing that we have to do now is ensure that we don't make the mistake that we made there and leave people aside for 3 or 4 years. I think we'll have to look at the down under 20 team, and Tom Close, who's a big strong lad who was on that team, who's playing middle of the park for Hilltown. The likes of him need to be brought into a county setup now for next year. He might not play next year for down, but he needs to be there. He needs to be training at that level, and he needs to be brought in early so that A, he challenges the players that are there because he's a different type of player, and B, that he's getting the experience of what it's going to take to be a county footballer. And younger players in the same age bracket, 20, 21, 22, who have that physique, because while Danny says that probably the best or close to the best squad is there, the only thing that I would say on that is that maybe we have 20, 25 players who are too similar. And there's about maybe 4 or 5 guys could play in the same position. And while they might actually be in the best 30 footballers in down, we should probably only be picking the 2 or 3 best for that position and finding another 1 or 2 who might offer something different, a potential different strategy, a potential different game plan. And it ties in as well to one of the other points Danny made, and for some reason I'm agreeing with almost everything Danny Hughes is saying here, but is that he spoke earlier on about Kilcoo and how Kilcoo are a player-led team, and how as a manager or a coach going in there, yes, you train the team, you prepare the team, but certainly once they cross the white line, 98% of what happens is going to come from the 15 players who are on the field at that given moment. And it ties in as well with the other point of overcoaching, because I think now there's probably in a number of people, and this is probably a number of players in almost every club, who think they have to be told exactly what to do, exactly where to be, exactly when to be for every minute of the 60 or whatever amount of time they're on the field. And this is possibly a generation potentially who have grown up playing PlayStations, Xboxes, and are used to being able to tell every player that they're playing at that moment exactly where to be and when to be. They're a generation who have grown up watching a county game that has evolved into a very tactical game. Thankfully, it is actually evolving out of that back into some kind of more natural football, or at least a more tactically attacking game. But they have grown up watching almost chess-like game of Gaelic football. And they think, oh, well, if county teams are playing it almost like a chess game, we need to be playing like a chess game. Whereas another factor that comes into that is that quite often, if you have a panel of 30 players in a club team, they're all not going to be, they're not all going to have the football knowledge, the football brain that 30 guys in a county panel have. So you simply can't set up the same way. You simply can't coach to the same level because too many of them actually won't be able to take it on board. So you have to try and keep it as simple as possible and have that element of the play that is spontaneous, that is people playing off the cuff, that is people learning from their own mistakes and applying that learning as they go. And it has to be driven by the playing group, because the manager, yes, and the management team can guide and they can coach, but all successful teams, it comes from within. And the players have to appreciate this and seize on that. And that is why Kilcoo have won 6 or 7 championships in a row. That's why Mayo, in fairness to them, while Danny measures everything in silverware, that's why Mayo come back every year, because they have players in that squad who drive the thing on, who simply don't know when to give up and say, oh, I'm not going to do it again. They just keep coming back for more. They keep coming back for more. And that is what you have to have if you have any.
Who is going, who from you then has the best squad to do this then from Division 2? Who for you, like you see the last games, and I'm not going to put Danny on the spot here and say, but the last game is Longstone against Castlewellan. I know there's a couple of games in between that, but do you think that's going to be a big factor?
That's actually a key point there. There's Anna Clone who haven't been far away in a couple of results. Yes, they've got even in the corner and doing they were getting beat, but there was only 2 or 3 points in it. So we play them Monday night, a difficult game. We have a game against St John's to play on Friday night. And I know St John's aren't going well down there. As a manager, when you don't have that level of control, and it's very much, what Pete was saying, just reiterating what I had mentioned. But the thing about it is that reminds me of Graham Souness. When Graham Souness went from Middlesbrough to Liverpool, he I think I'm not sure who signed him. Was it Bob Paisley or the guy after it? Who was it? Who's the guy after Bob Paisley? Joe Fagan.
Yeah.
He went to Ronnie Moran anyway, and Ronnie Moran, and he says to Ronnie Moran, well, you haven't spoke to me this week in training. He says, what do you want me to do? And Ronnie Moran says, fuck off. He says, you're a midfielder. You should know what to do. And that goes back to the very, very premise that this game that we love and we play and we're so interested in, the thing about it is the fundamentals haven't changed. The fundamentals of blocking, of kicking, of catching, of shooting, of pickups, of hard work haven't changed. And yes, the tactics and the overcoaching and all that kind of stuff has all come on board and it's become very technical. But players have to decipher through all that, right? If my man's dead, where do I go? Where do I cover off the danger? Stuff like that. And where to run, when to run, and where's the best chance that I'm going to get on the end something. And those are the fundamentals that we sort of have to allow young people now that are coming into the game. We have to let them work it out for themselves, because if we don't, then it just becomes, as Peter said, it's too chess-like. We don't want it like rugby. We don't want it like soccer, where it's very, very technical. You have to let the brilliant players be brilliant and pull something out of the bag. And that was so brilliant about Marty. Marty wouldn't have conformed to a lot of the tactical stuff. He just let him go and do what he had to do. And just, I suppose, players like me would have worked our socks off to try and get the ball to him and just allow him to pull the strings and do what he had to do, And that's a skill in itself.
But I just on that there, we played underage against each other numerous times. But you would have been a floor player at underage. So, when did that change then? That you were.
It never changed. What are you talking about?
To be honest, toe tapping looked difficult for you at one stage.
Oh, you mean passing? Passing. Because I heard of one time a certain player said he had a decent McKenna Cup campaign, and then he left shortly after the McKenna Cup, and he said, I think one of the things that he said that who was it? It was me. I will only pass the Ronnie Morda, and he will only pass to me.
That's not far wrong though.
And that was, and I never quite worked out where that come from. But anyway, but I suppose from my perspective, I loved, you know, I suppose I had a confidence that I had the fitness and the speed. And I got that. Obviously, I worked very, very hard to make sure I was very, very strong. And actually, I would have met Pete Senior in Bourne Gym. The place that all the hard work done was, to be fair, in Bourne Gym. And Bourne had a fantastic gym set up there, and Pete Junior would have been aware of that. But they had a fantastic, one of the only clubs in the country. You know, when weights rooms and weights weren't a huge thing, they weren't really the science that they are now. But that was the place, and it's not far from me. So it was a fantastic place to train, and yeah, the fields are. But you know, I spent a lot of time just away. I just spent a lot of time away from training, actually shooting, speed work, and stuff like that. I would have taken balls with me and my father, and obviously and a lot of friends that would come with me and just knock balls into me, and I would have been doing it all at pace, and maybe for 30 or 40 minutes. But that's what I used to do, and I was always conscious. I suppose I was scared from not being on that 99 minor team. I know, John, you were thereabouts at that time. You were a great footballer, and I was always scared from not making that pound.
I went the other way, Donny. Then I was like, I'm being honest. Like I went there. Like, you know, I thought to myself, you know,
what do I have to do to get onto this thing? And,
yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like,
you would have been stronger. You would have been stronger and taller than me at that time. So it was a big disappointment. But like, me and you had probably an odd year on that, and then you know,
I still didn't make it.
I know, and neither did I. And that was the bit that hurt the most. Like, you would be coming into a All-Ireland winning minor setup and stuff like that, and that. I never forgot that, and it probably made me, when I did get into the senior team, I think it was 2 years after, and I had grown a bit, but it scared me, and it made me always afraid that I would have lost it as soon as I got it. Do you know what I mean? So that fear always drove me on, and it drove me to training, and it drove me away from training in the gym and all the rest of it. But, you know, I can always turn around and say that I maxed everything I got, but I loved that. Where I started was my club. And I always made sure that I was performing for the club. And I always wanted to be honest with you, if I hadn't kicked 1-9 or 1-10 a game, I was fucking really annoyed with myself, you know what I mean? And maybe it wouldn't have been to the benefit of the club, because we were so focused always then getting the ball into myself, and I had brothers playing at the time, and it didn't make for a very holistic approach to the forward play. Do you know what I mean? And it probably, you know, it maybe prevented all boys from progressing a wee bit, and you know, maybe that wasn't a good thing. But I definitely think that it all comes down to hard work, and that's sometimes when you pass the football fields now or anything else, you see nobody on them.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, Danny, too. Whenever like you're coaching as well, like, and I can speak from my view, like, I didn't work that hard, you know, to push my levels, like, you know, and I'm trying to get this across now to teams that I coach, you know, don't waste it. If you've got something, maximize it.
And that's what I honestly, genuinely, that's what I did. There was players that came into the county panel, and I can say they had everything. They had things, but what they didn't have was this focus and determination that no matter what, and there's shit you have to deal, and there's more failures at that level, and there's more failures at club. Like, the Sava wasn't a big club. I remember as an underage player, we had huts. I remember changing out the huts, and you could hear the A team being read out next door, because they were wafer thin, obviously, and there was holes in them. And we weren't a big club or anything like it at the time. But what we did was a very, very good bunch of players, and we obviously have to say my father and a fella Eamon McGrath, they took us right up through, and John, you'll be familiar with them, and the South Down teams. And what we did. There was a couple of dedicated men that took a group right through. And Peter Turley, Dolan Murphy, Johnny, all those Gary Digney boys like that. We all come through at the same time, and we lacked the facilities. But to tell you what we did, we had a football field with footballs, and it did go back to the very, very basics. And we ended up getting into Division 1. And for Saville, who had been operating in Division 3 for years, that was a big thing. I still say that's an achievement, albeit not in silverware, Peter, but it is an achievement of sorts in a lot of other ways. But, you know, it does annoy me sometimes when you see the free kick takers, even when you go back to that great 90s team. You had Gary Mason, you had Gregory McCartan, you had Ross Carr, you had boys that could kick off the ground. And now you go into the game and you don't see boys that can kick it off the ground. And it's really sad. It's actually really, really sad to see, because it's just a huge lack of
Charlie Smith hopefully is changing all that and getting young fellas in now, because like whenever he steps up for a free kick now, you can see the crowd get like are
excited.
Yeah.
Excited.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And that's brilliant for Down. That'll be brilliant for Down if that's the case. Do you think he'll go straight in?
I think Bubba's playing well. It's gonna, like, I don't know, like Bubba for me, I thought was exceptional against Saul. Really did. Like, you know, I thought he was.
Bubba gets a rough ride, but I can tell you, he's a first class fella and he's a first class keeper.
That's what Down maybe need that competition too. Donny, you know, there's nothing wrong with competition, like, you know. So
Danny's roller coaster takes him away from home in the last 3 games. I noticed 3 away ones for you, Danny.
3 away games, is it, Morning? Oh, yeah. That could be
three away games, yeah. 3 away games, and yeah, I'm gonna up the medication now over the next 10 days.
Marty, for you, do you think the Stones just done enough?
No, well, here you see,
played them. Benny's got them going well now. He has.
In the grand scheme of things, John, this Mourne derby, if I noticed the Kingdom didn't go to Saul.
No.
COVID within apparently COVID was in the camp. So does that mean that their game against Longstone then, that in the grand scheme of things, that would have been a local derby, that would have been a big game for them. And after the Kingdom taking points off Danny, he would have liked them to do them a favour, take points off the Stones.
Of course. And see, Declan Musson is up there. And I actually see Declan. Declan was one of the best coaches that I ever played under. Declan Musson. He was a phenomenal coach, and he was in my Down for a couple of years. And I just thought, he is. I don't really understand some of the unraked results, actually, to be quite honest. Because they went away there and got hammered by somebody.
They've got 2 bad injuries, 2 cruciate injuries. So,
that's right.
And I think Declan Doyle's actually broke his jaw as well in an altercation with a player. So, you know, Division 2, maybe the teams that are in Division 2 only have really 19, 20 players that you know, whenever the quality just doesn't stack up as much as Division 1. But like Patrick is going to win this, Pete, don't you think? And who else is going to join in then, do you think?
The Stones to go away to Breda.
Yeah, Stones go away to Breda.
Just before we go off that, Danny mentioned Declan Musson there, and just I would like to pass on behalf of myself, and I'm sure yourselves, sympathies to Declan, who lost his mother in the last day or 2.
Didn't realise that. Oh no, it's good. It's good.
Yes,
it's good.
so
it's
sympathies
good
to Declan
to know that.
Musson fan.
Go ahead.
I do want to also say, you know, we're speaking there about Division 2 and how competitive it is. And as Marty has pointed out there, there's games that teams could go and lose. There's games that people are fighting really tooth and nail for points in. And it comes back to a debate we had briefly earlier on where we talked about relegation and promotion. And the reality is that by extending Division 1 back to 12 teams, you're going to take what would be 2 of your top teams out of Division 2 and replacing them with 2 teams in Division 3 who ultimately, with respect to Danny, who Saville could be one of those teams, mightn't be as strong. And ultimately, if we decide that, or if Down decide to keep a 12-team Division 1 and a 10, or potentially even grow to a 12-team Division 2, we're going to lose a bit of that competition. And I think the 10-team league has actually worked well in the last couple of years because every game is competitive.
In Division 2, it certainly is.
What Danny was saying earlier. Sorry?
in Division 2, it certainly is. You know, the 10 team league.
Yeah, well, Division 2 has been, Division 1 has been, and as Danny said earlier on, the top 3 or 4 or 5 teams in Division 2 are almost every bit as good as the bottom 3 or 4 or 5 in Division 1. And the thing you do is you risk losing that by bringing 2 of those teams out of the division. So I think, while obviously it's going to be a Division 1 of 12 teams next year, I think for the good of Down football, it is in Down's interest to reduce Division 1 again to 10 teams as quickly as, let's say, COVID.
But who's going to go up? Who's going to go up, Pete?
I'm going to have to call Downpatrick, followed by, much as it's going to disappoint some of you guys, I just think Longstone are finding form at the right time. They had a win away at Saul, which isn't an easy place to go. They racked up 5-17 in their last match. I know St John's been having a tough time, but to be putting up those big scores, to be bringing that confidence in at this time of the season is very, very important. I see Longstone possibly finishing second.
Good. Marty, what about yourself?
I think Longstone's trip away to Bredo could be a banana skin. Bredo, a few indifferent results, but if they put a full team out down Cherryville, they'll give. I think I go, and I think Castlewellan can go up and beat the Longstone. So I'm going down Paddock and Castlewellan.
What about Glen, Marty? What's the chances of them joining the party, or is it too late now for Glen? I
think they've dropped 6 points. So once you've dropped 6 points, you've dropped out of the running. Yeah, you know, they improved as the league went on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and they caught Downpatrick on the hop. I think, as I said the last time out, I think a bit of complacency set in there with Downpatrick heading up to Glen and thought they would handy enough now. And Danny mentioned it earlier. Once you cross that line, you can't change the attitude of a player, no matter how many instructions you send on. If you cross the line with the wrong attitude, too late. You're
and the same with Marty, and you're totally right. And to be honest with you, and see, complacency is a funny thing, because you mightn't even know that you're complacent, or managers or coaches mightn't even see the complacency, and for whatever reason, it's just something. And you might look back in retrospect after, as a player or a manager, and say, you know what, there was wee small things there that just tipped the scales against us. And you know, I caught 20 minutes at the end of the Glen and Downpatrick match, and they had a penalty, and the fella blasted over the bar. It was such a tight, small field. It really didn't suit Downpatrick. Downpatrick obviously had a couple of injuries there. Big Pete Torley went off injured and stuff like that. And I just think that it was one of those nights that probably Downpatrick should have won the game, but they didn't. Keeper made an awful blunder for a goal and stuff like that. So it was one of them. They got their lesson on the Monday, and then they gave us a lesson on the Friday. So it was unfortunate probably from our side, you know. But
yeah,
they're worth. They're definitely worth going to the first division.
No, they definitely are, and they've added in young players as well, young Oren Cunningham as well, Tom Smith obviously, and you've got the likes of the stalwarts like Peter Turley and Anthony Dogley and all back. So it's Downpatrick's to lose at this stage, but can't see it happening. Lads, 10 minutes left. Marty, we'll concentrate on Division 1, Division 2 this week. We'll start with Division 4 because obviously you called a game for Division 3. So Division 4, Bright with a massive win in Division 4. What way is it going to shape up in your eyes?
Division 4, Bright and St Paul's, I believe. Games to play. They have, Bright have Drummond, Esclis, Drummond, East Belfast. I can't see them dropping any more points. They've dropped 2 points all year. I don't see them dropping any more. St Paul's have 3 games left on Drummond and Glasdrummond. They've only dropped 3 points, so I think they'll not drop any more points. Mm-hmm. So I just think Dromara have a tough 3 away games and 1 home game. They have 4 games left and finish away to Calif.
Now, how much did Miles pay you now to say who is Dromara's games against, Marty, just so that we get a clear picture of what's happening, what's the landscape?
East Belfast at home Mitchell's away, Arglass away, and Khalif away.
Yeah. No, I'll give you that there. Yeah, it's good to see Mitchell's again, fielding men as well. So well done to the club there. A lot of hard work went in, obviously, to get that up and running. But Bright beat Khalif. We were bigging up Khalif, and then they go and lose 2 on the bounce, Marty.
Aye, Khalif had been unbeaten going into the weekend there, and then Friday night, Bright beat them 110 to 19, and then on Monday night they were beaten not 18 to not 10 by St Paul's. So when St Paul's that's tight pitch down there at St Paul's, and I watched Khalif playing, and the way they play, I think I said the last time on, they like to leave 3 full forwards intact inside the 14-yard line, 13-meter line for those younger ones. They like to leave, they wouldn't have had that distance down in the St Paul's game. Isolate them boys, and it would have been easy for St Paul's to counteract it. They drop a couple of men back in front of them. So I would say that they suffered a wee bit, and they're running tough games there as well, which is not easy when you're playing Friday, Monday. It's tough on the boys. So
Marty, that reminds me of Khalif. I tell you, we had some battles down there on them, us, and championship battles. Darren Swale would have been playing at the time, and serious players like, real good players, Rosie and boys like that. But I tell you, you knew you were in a game down there, on a Friday night. I tell you, and they had a good team. They had a decent team.
I remember playing against Darren. He played centre half back, and then Rosie, as you say, didn't. And that pitch, he knew it like the back of his hand. He swung. And
Darren Swale taught me. That's the thing, And then he would run up behind you, fucking, didn't you? And all kinds of nonsense, you know what I mean? But I tell you, it was serious stuff down there, boy. But a very dedicated stalwart for Khalif, like.
It'll be interesting. That Dramara game is going to be after the rest of the final game, so it's going to be very interesting. It actually could be a decider.
Is there 3 teams then, Maury, in your opinion? If just let's say Dramara, we're not putting anything, but do you think St Paul's and Bright then? Dramara in the next.
Bright, and after that, if Khalif could come out of, could be the other one involved.
Right. Okay. And with Bright or for me it's been a surprise how well they've done in Division 4, but Big Fitzy, obviously a friend of the podcast and my co-presenter last year's and his coach as well. So just with Bright, I think there's great underage going on down there as well. So it's good to see one of my father's old clubs progressing well. So it'd be great to see now. Division 3, man. Marty, the game of the week was Leitrim against Saville. Talk us through it and who played well and
cracking game. Leitrim on Friday night, when wet conditions, tough. Now it didn't rain during the match, but slippy conditions underfoot didn't lend for great football. And I'm sure both teams will feel they could have done a lot better on the night. Saville will probably think they were a bit hard done by. Saville scored a goal late in the second half, and it was ruled square ball. And Leitrim went up and scored a goal very similar, and it was given. So there was a lot of annoyance to the Saville boys about what was the difference between that one and that one. Long ball in, and when the player wasn't in the square when the ball was kicked, but ran in and punched it into the net. So.
Which very rarely does square balls. I haven't seen a square ball since that rule's been done away with, and I don't think I've seen one since it's a rule. The specifics of the rule.
Yeah.
I thought it was very hard on Saville, to be honest with you. The ball went in, and it looked like the player ran in and palmed it to the net.
I wasn't at the game, Marty, but were they both from open play? Because the one big difference in that rule is that from a dead ball situation, the old rule still applies.
That's a good point. Now, I'm not 100% sure, Pete. I know the later one was...
Because if one was from a free kick, the ball still has to be in the square before the player. Whereas if it's from open play, the ball just has to be kicked before the player's in the square. So there is a big difference in open play and in a free kick. And it's one of those ones that always maybe teams don't think of late in the game. But if you have a free kick with 30 seconds to go, instead of dropping the free kick straight in and bringing the old score forward into play, you're much safer playing it short and seriously reducing your chances of having a square ball.
Just how long do I write that down, Pete? Now.
Right, Danny.
That's actually, and it never occurred to me that was something.
No, it's a fair point. I know the
sideline ball is not treated as a free kick, is it?
Now you're really getting technical.
That play, I suppose.
Yeah, dead players, right?
Dead ball. That's I'm not sure on that one.
Yeah, well, now I know the Leitrim one was from open play, and I can't just recall where the Savile one was from open play or not, but I thought the Savile's big players done very well. Daniel McCarthy at centre half forward. That's twice I've watched him. I watched him against Drumgath. I watched him like a smashing player. Keelan Rice inside, ball sticks every time. We talked last week about Marcus Muskelly at Dara Cross, about when the ball went into him, it stuck every time. Keelan Rice is the same. When the ball goes into him, he's just so solid that he doesn't get knocked off it. And I did mention last week about the strength and conditioning of Savile. I thought their fitness, their strength. Now, Leitrim were missing PJ Davison, bit of a loss for them, ball winning ability. Liam Middleton was carrying an injury, his knee well strapped up and wasn't as mobile. Savile pulled him out of the middle, just got a man on him and took him for a run to try and get him out of the middle because of his ball winning ability. Three McCrickards lined out in the forward line, Pearce, Rory and Connor. And Rory come out, number 13 is back, come out, roved around and tried to get on the ball a bit. But both teams, like Leitrim shot a hell of a wides as well. They were getting instructions from the sideline to change the free taker, change this. Danny mentioned earlier about the boys, the 90s team, the setting the ball on the ground and putting it over the bar. Gary Mason and Ross Carr, Big Gregory, and then boys. They just didn't seem to have anybody that could do that. You know, just hold on, settle down. They set the ball down and just struggled over the bar. They were missing. It was getting very frustrating now. Frank.
You so playing Marty?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was he on the freeze or?
He was on the freeze, and then I think the Connor had a few, and then they swapped about, and they were trying to. The number of wides, I think that they were well into double figures.
Was Leitrim well worth the win then? And do you see them?
Oh, I see Leitrim will definitely go up. Well, funny thing is, if Leitrim go to Shamrocks and get beat, that's all three of them top teams will have dropped 2 points. And then it goes to head to head, which doesn't quite work out because Shamrocks will beat Leitrim, which means they deserve to go up in front of them. But Leitrim will have beat Savile, so they deserve to go up in front of them. But Savile beat Shamrock, so how do you divide three?
So it'll be a playoff, will it?
I think it goes down to score difference then, doesn't it?
It depends if anybody's conceded.
There's
conceded haven't they?
Connacht have conceded, so score difference is ruled out.
Oh, so this is squeaky bum time then.
It would have to be a three-way playoff then.
Yeah,
imagine so.
But I mean, the thing on that is, I would actually fancy Leitrim and Savile to go up,
right?
Because Shamrocks have to go to Leitrim, I think, and I think then Shamrocks finish at home to Drumgath, and Drumgath obviously were in the Intermediate Championship final last year as well. So Shamrocks have a couple of really difficult fixtures in there still to come. And I think Leitrim and Savile maybe will just get over the line in the end. Although, as Marty says, if Shamrocks can upset Leitrim, then it's all there to play for. But at this stage, I would be seeing Leitrim and Savile coming out of Division 3.
Good stuff, Donny. Last couple of minutes, just but Savile, they've taken me a bit by surprise this year. I thought it was going to be between Leitrim and Shamrocks, and their superiority in Division 3. Was very impressed with Shamrocks last year, playing them in the championship. Ronnie is doing a terrific job in Savile, and for you, being around the club, who is stepping up this year then?
Daniel McCarthy, I think, is benefiting from that role at centre half forward actually, because at midfield he was probably being asked to do too much. He was tracking runners, doing a lot of defensive stuff there, and that meant that took away from his I suppose his main attribute. His main attribute is, I suppose, running with the ball, going past men. When Daniel gets the speed up, he can fly. He really can. And I suppose centre half forward, he's really blossomed. They're at centre half forward. Keely Rice has been a big addition back as well, and as Marty rightly said, the ball sticks when it goes in. But you've also boys like Darren Cunningham and stuff like that have been around a long time, and they're performing really well, still doing a really good job there, and they've several of some really good players. It's just getting them focused on committing, really committing to getting into that second division and going further. But we have been really affected by the loss of big players like Niall Medine, Pat Haver, we don't seem to lose. We seem to lose big. A couple of years ago, Conor Murphy, who was an outstanding wing back there as well. So it's just we're just going through a bit of a transition at the minute. And
you're not changing in the huts up there anymore, innit?
No, that's for sure.
When you look at some setup, I was up there a couple of weeks ago, and the setup up there's amazing.
It really is a credit to everybody that mucked in and the progression in the club. And Dara said you've no God-given right because you've the facilities there, but we really should be producing underage teams that are a conveyor belt of 2 or 3 players every age group. But again, we've the same challenges that everybody else has. We are to a certain extent rural. We are picking from the same families, but slowly but surely, things hopefully should change. With there is a lot of coaching and development going on there, and there is a great buzz. Listen, the GAA, what a fantastic organisation it is for getting our youth out and getting it over on activity and stuff like that. So I have to say, we're no different than every other club out there. We've big aspirations to develop there. It just at times it can feel that you're maybe you're running just to stand still, if you know what I mean. And
Savile, that night I was up on Savile with a group, just the wee field to the right hand side as you come in through the gate. They were using it for parking, but there's a bit of coaching going on of young girls about 8 years of age, and there's a couple of the club men taking the girls, and I thought this is fabulous. As you say, the GA, great organisation for community, for everything. I thought that was fabulous. There's just a group in there coaching away ahead of the senior match, and then they'll all come down, they'll stand in the bank and they'll watch the senior match, and they'll want to be part of it. And it's great to see.
That's wonderful. Listen, I just think, given what we've went through there for 2 years, and still are going through with COVID, people not being able to see anybody, obviously the implications from all sides of physical and mental health. But, the fact that we have football and we have these opportunities to talk and have these podcasts with you, John, as well, it is phenomenal. Like, where else in the world do you have something as parochial as this? And you just don't have it. So it is wonderful to be able to have this experience,
Yeah, no, and boys, I suppose it is coming into the business end of the season now. Marty, give me the games that you think are of note. And which one you're going to this week? Did Savile get you a cup of tea at least, Marty?
Oh, Jerry Quinn looks up. Jackie and Jerry, I know very well.
Hi, Jackie here.
Yeah, Jackie was at the match, but he spent the whole time talking to somebody and never even watched the match.
Jackie's famous thing is he stands in the middle of the field and can referee a game without moving to either side.
I would say so.
It's a bit like the way John Fagan played in the last few years.
Hey, whenever you're the composer of the orchestra, you don't have to move. Everything else moves.
Just before you, and we mightn't have time for this. How do you find the standard of refereeing in town?
That's going to be a separate podcast now, but it is absolute. I think it's too.
We talked about this last week, John.
I think there's no consistency with the referees at all, and it's infuriating, and it's actually one of my big bugbears is that, and you know, I'm going to get a referee on. I've already asked a couple of referees to come on to see what
I
their
think,
interpretation of rules are, what their interpretation of games is, because
but
you know, some of the refereeing hasn't been good enough, and we've been on the end of that. So that's
from a
all I'm
coaching
saying.
perspective, it makes it very difficult because
Yes.
particularly defensively,
Yeah.
you know, you're trying to coach your team how to tackle.
But you're,
And in
you're
one
basically,
week,
Peter, you're basically not telling boys to tackle anymore. I think
well,
that's basically what it is.
but there are a number of referees who let you tackle, who let the game go, who let it be physical. But then the next week, for example, on last night, Rostrevor game, you know, we ended up conceding 11 scoreable frees. Now, yes, a couple of those were fouls and were soft fouls that we shouldn't have given away. But
Yes.
there's no way in that game we conceded 11 scoreable frees.
Yeah.
But
as I say, lads, well, Danny, what's your? It's just a couple of minutes, and then we'll cover it in different shows.
The one I have to say in this things, and there's a reason why he's obviously at intercounty level. But we had Paul Falloon last night, and I thought he was absolutely excellent.
Yeah.
You know, he's a really sensible, and obviously he played along with myself with Savile and stuff like that. Paul was a.
Well, there we go. Favoritism as well. Like, you know what I mean?
No, genuinely, I have to say.
No.
He actually done the Enrique game and we're a bit up there, but I know that's we're not getting into that. But he actually is a really good referee.
Yes.
Sensible lad, knows the race, really good referee. The guy we had it down, Patrick. Oh my God, I'm just, you know, it was honestly. And it was actually, somebody put it to me, and genuinely, hand and heart, somebody put it to me that it's actually making him feel as if he doesn't want to be involved in football anymore. Some of the decisions that are going against his own particular team, and some of the inconsistencies there. Actually, he doesn't want. He used the word corrupt. Now, I thought it was obviously a bit. He was obviously feeling very emotional about it, but it's got to the. I think it's got to the point where they've become the story, and it hasn't been about the matches in some cases. You know,
I just think there has to be more thought about who is refereeing games as well. You know, what clubs are being involved in refereeing games. Like, somebody has to look at the league table and see who.
You have to understand what a referee puts in his report is Bible. Bible. It's up there. It's up there along with something that the Pope would say. Do you know what I mean? And that is the big. There is no, you know, that is a big issue. Generally, it goes on the word of one person, and you as a coach or a player or anything have not a leg to stand on in that. And I think that's a serious issue within the GAA in general, not just.
I've noticed refereeing across all the divisions, and I've watched a lot of games this year, and I think a lot of the referees genuinely don't know the rules. Like, I learned something tonight from Pete about the free kick and the square ball and the from play, and see even taking the mark, the midfield mark, the defensive mark, the attacking mark, and blowing the whistle for the mark. Or do you take the mark? Do you play on? Do you get 4 seconds before? I think some of the referees just don't know.
Yeah,
simply don't.
And it's probably not their fault, because the mark's a nonsense. The inside mark's a nonsense, and maybe the one outside has a merit. But there's so many different rules now. What's a black card? What's the yellow card? All that nonsense. Total nonsense.
Let me just, and I know you sort of have defended the referees there a wee bit. I would have to say that, I mean, I'm not sure who you were talking to, Danny, but the word corruption is probably too strong, because no referee goes out to have a bad game. They're all going out with the best of intentions.
This guy said it to me.
I know. But what you say as well there, Marty, is very, very true. And it comes back to what we said earlier about you can't coach county players the same way you coach club players, because the mental capacity is different in a county squad and a club squad. The same thing goes for, you cannot expect a referee refereeing in down Division 1, 2, 3 or 4 to referee the same way someone is going to in Croke Park in an All-Ireland semi-final, who has 4 qualified referees as his umpires, who has 2 linesmen and a 4th official there, all linked up to him. I mean, the GAA have this thing about introducing overcomplicated rules that make refereeing for one guy, which most club refereeing still is, one man trying to do a job, almost impossible. I mean, can he see every time if the kick has come from outside the 45?
Pete,
Kenny
my
said-
thing is, it's not the overcomplication of rules, right? I'll
No,
give you
I
an
know.
example. I'll give you an example, right, of consistency. What I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the mark and all that. You bend your back, you go down for the ball, and someone empties you, and the referee says play on. Like you're taught at the first thing you're taught in under 10s or 12s, bend your back and get your free kick. You know, and then you go up the field and boy does it, the other team does it, and they get a free. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
John, but you see when you go on to that, and I think Paul's one of the top referees for a reason because he played the game and he played it at a decent level.
Yeah.
And the big problem is that you don't have enough players that'll commit to being. Why would you? You'd need to be mental to go on the referee.
Management, the coaching is bad enough, but he's throwing referee.
So go into the referee, like, geez, you really are a glutton for punishment. And if you have any self-worth confidence issues, you certainly wouldn't be doing refereeing because the abuse. And you know what? And it's a really difficult job to do. Really,
it is. But it's just
fair play. The Leitrim Savile match, refereed by Fergal McGuire. I think he's from Brentford.
Yeah,
I thought he done it very well. He done the game very well. He let the game flow.
But we'll get what do you call it? We'll get another podcast, and as I say, I'll bring on a couple of referees and see just what is going on behind the scenes and out there as well. Marty, just give us a couple of games and then your game of the week, please.
Well, I'm looking forward to this week. St Paul's and Dundrum will be a good game in Division 4. Division 3. There's no real standout games until that Shamrock Leitrim game at the at the end of the very end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Would have said Longstone and the Kingdom had the Kingdom be at full strength for Division 2, but we don't know what we're going to get with the Kingdom. And Division 1, Kilcoo and the Bridge at Kilcoo.
Okay.
That'll be an interesting one, but Division 4 probably St Paul's away to Dundrum. John Clark, he's doing a great job down there at Dundrum. So
you have a playing good football and
yeah,
trying new things.
Oh, they are. They're playing. He's introducing a bit of tactical awareness to them, and they're playing well. And then, as we talked about last week, Cormac Benny involved.
Yeah,
as well, which is a part of the squad, and he'll help them.
No. Pete, any standout games for you this week, apart from Straver?
well, I think the Seaside Derby and Straver will. I'd be surprised if there's anyone at any other game. Actually, I think the whole crowd's going to go to that. I would hesitate to call any real standout fixtures now because I mean we spoke about it a lot at the start, and I think a lot of teams are now starting to switch their focus to the championship, and I think we could end up calling games as maybe standout fixtures and find that someone holds a hand back or whatever. So I would hesitate to say any standout fixture except that if you go to Pettit Park, you won't be disappointed.
Well, I just think with the promotion though in the other games, there is going to be, I don't think anyone will be holding back on that.
To an extent, yes. I suppose as you go down the divisions, that's a fair enough point. That teams who are pressing will still obviously be trying their everything on the line to win those games. And I suppose you look maybe at Division 3 as one where this week both Leitrim and Shamrocks have away games, and an away match is always that slight increase of a chance of a slip up. Savile are at home to Clanabana. Clanabana are actually a bit of a hit and miss side themselves. They can on a given day surprise. So again, when there's that pressure of potentially going up or not going up, that can get into teams' heads as well. So yeah, I mean the next couple of rounds of games are going to be interesting for those teams who have that chance. But I do think we're coming close to the championship season. I do think we're going to start seeing that date of the 16th of September looming large for a lot of clubs.
Good stuff.
It also comes down to clubs' ambitions as well, in that a team who thinks, right, we have a serious chance here of winning whatever championship we're in, we're going to just park the league, and we're not overly concerned about that. That might happen too. Maybe Saul have been doing that all season. I don't know.
We're going for the senior championship. That's what it is.
But no, I do think there's a lot to look forward to in the coming weeks, and I think it was great this week as well to see 40,000 people back in Croke Park, and hopefully by the time we start club championship games on the 16th of September, we can have more than 500 going to them as well. Hopefully.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Just ran out of time. We'll go through the next week. We'll have a look at the All Ireland series as well. Obviously we'll have our finalists. So that'll be interesting as well. Man, thank you so much for coming on board. As I say, it's no such thing as bad publicity. So thanks to everyone for the follows and for the subscriptions. It's much appreciated, and it's great to see that everyone's so in tune with Down football. Man, we'll get you on again. Marty, get the game. What game are you going to, Marty?
I'd like to go to that the drum to watch the drum in St. Paul's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marty's there. Get him a cup of tea and a wee scone. Pete, thanks a million. Donny is off there. He must have his bed, the alarm for bed must have went off there. He needs his beauty sleep for the sun, get the sunbeds on. But
tactical change for Castlewellan for Friday night. So he had to go and deal with it.
He's reading up about the square ball. Maybe that's he's away to check it. But man, thank you so much.
No
Thanks,
problem.
John.
All the best, Pete.
See you
Right,
next
Marty,
week.
see ya.
Thank you.